Simplifying fractions. Now, simplifying fractions is just a way of making a fraction so it is the easiest to understand because it has the smallest amount of divisions in it. And if you look here, and the way that sometimes we refer to this is that the numerator and the denominator do not share a factor greater than 1. And all these are the same fraction. They're just have different numerator and denominators. So 50 over 100, that's a half, that's a half, that's a half, that's a half, that's a half. All those are half, but 1/2 is the simplest version of that. And just as an example to show you what I'm talking about, if I wanted to go over here, and clearly that's 1/2. So is that. But now if I wanted to go ahead and change that up a little bit, and I now have 4/8. Previously I had, if I want to go back for a second, right now I've got 2/4, which is equivalent to that. But then if I want to take this over here, I've now got approximately 4/8. It's the same amount filled in, it's just represented slightly differently. So the way that it works in terms of changing fractions is you've got to multiply or divide the top and the bottom, and the numerator and the denominator, by the same factor. And then you'll make sure to keep to go ahead and have your fractions stay equivalent. Because again, up here, this is just 1/2 multiplied by 3 on the top and bottom, by 4, by 2, by 10, and by 50. So if we want to write equivalent fractions, all we have to do is multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing. So, for example here, if I multiply the top and the bottom by 2 of this, I've got 12 over 14. If I multiply it by 3, I've got 18 over 21. I could do this all day long. Here, if I multiply the top and bottom by 2, 6 and 8. I multiply the top and bottom, if I prefer to do it by 10. As long as I do it both to the top and the bottom, it's okay. Now, if we move on for a second here, we can also, when we simplify fractions, we have to divide by the same factor that is shared by the numerator and the denominator. So this is where divisibility tests really help out, because you know what the numbers that go in are. So, for example, 120 over 100. What's something that goes in both the top and bottom? Well, 10 does. So when we divide the top by 10 and the bottom by 10, we just ditch that last 0. So we got 12 over 20. If we wanted to go ahead and do it a little bit differently, if we just wanted to divide the top and bottom by 2, we'd end up with 60 over 100. We want to divide the top and the bottom by the greatest common factor, which is the way you simplify things. Greatest common factor between these two numbers, if you remember over here, just want to remind you how to do greatest common factor. You end up with 260, circle that, 415, 2 and 2, and 3 and 5. So that is 120 prime factorized. Now 200 prime factorized is going to be, let's do 20 and 10, 5 and 2, 2 and 10. One more time here. 2 and 10. So if I look here and I count off and see which factors they share, well, do they share? I gotta change the color here. Do they share a 2? Well, yeah, they share a 2. So that's one thing they share. So 2. Do they share another 2? Yes, they do. Do they share another 2? Yep. Do they share a 3? No, they don't share a 3. Do they share... Oh, you know what? I just realized I did not break this down fully. Let me go back and finish this one off. Don't know what I'm thinking when I went ahead and thought that 10 was a prime number. So let me fix that. That's 5, not 10. Just remember, this times this should equal that. So going back to this problem here for a second. See, even Mr. Montgomery occasionally makes mistakes. Here, 5 and 5 we have. So, times 5. So we've got 2 5s. And there's no other shared factor, so it's going to be 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8 times 5, 40. So if we divide the top and the bottom by 40, we should end up with our simplest fraction, which is just going to be 3 over 5. Now this one here, 16 over 20, what goes into there? Well, we know 2 does, so let's go ahead and start there. If we go ahead and do 2, then we're going to have 8 over 10. We also know that 4 does, because 4 is divisible into both those, and then we end up with 4 over 5. And actually, there's only 2 ways of simplifying this. If I wanted to expand it and make it less simple, I certainly could keep multiplying, but there's only 2 factors, or 2 sets of factors that are shared, and those are the 2's and the 4's. Well, and then 1, obviously. So we're done.